Hi everybody, welcome back to Andrew McDonald English. This is lesson 7, and today we're going to be starting the future tense with the future simple and the future continuous. Now, these two are actually quite simple. They don't require a ton of moving bits, and both have no irregulars, so they will all follow these rules. But the future simple and future continuous are very important to look at for the next two future tenses, which will be in lesson 8. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first is the future simple, and the future simple is used for an independent, specific action in the future. So if you look here at the timeline, here is right now, where we are, and then it's just one action sometime in the future, just an action itself, not a long one, with a start and an end exactly in one moment. Now, the formation is quite simple. You take your pronoun and then you add will and the verb itself. So instead of I walk, you would say I will walk. It is quite simple. So let's get into a little bit of practice. Change from the present to the future simple. The first one they give you is we go to the lake. We go to the lake. Now, as we saw above, all you have to do is add will and then the verb. So this one would become we will go to the lake. We will go to the lake. The next one here, they buy dinner. Same thing, just add will and keep the verb where it is, which would become they will buy dinner. Last one here, she is hungry would simply become she, and you know that the is of the verb be. She will be hungry, because is just the conjugation for the verb to be. Okay, so this is it. This is how you form the simple, the future simple. It is quite basic. Simply give your pronoun, will, and the verb itself. Now we'll continue with the future continuous. No pun intended. So, the future continuous is also quite simple, but it is a bit more than the future simple is. Now, the future continuous is used for actions that will be in progress at a certain time. Actions that will be happening at a time. So, what does this mean? Here's this example. This example says, at 9 o'clock, I will be studying. At 9 o'clock, I will be studying. So, if we look at our timeline, here is right now. This is now. And at 9 o'clock is a point in the future. At 9 o'clock is in the future. But the action is at and around 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock is encompassed within the action. However, this action itself, it could be like this. It could also be like that. So it doesn't have to be, it could start at 9 and continue, or it could end at 9, but you have to be doing the action of studying at 9 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock, I will be studying. At 9 o'clock, I will be studying. And that, I feel you may have picked up the pattern on the form already, but let's go through it regardless. You take will be, add the verb, and then add ing. Will be, verb, ing. So let's look at a few examples. Okay. The first one is I study. Just like we saw above, I study. So, how do we form? Take the pronoun I add will be, add the verb, and then add ing. To form, I will be studying. Pronoun, will be, verb, ing. So let's continue. They travel in Spain. They travel in Spain. They, pronoun, will be, travel, the verb, ing, in Spain. They will be traveling in Spain. Let's do one more. You drive. You drive would become you will be driving. This would often be in a sentence such as at lunchtime, you will be driving. So that is it. That is how you format the present continuous. Simply will be, verb, and ing. Okay, so now that we've done the future simple and future continuous, let's do a little bit of practice for those both forms. So this exercise, they ask you to rearrange the words in the sentence to create a question in future simple. After, change that question to future continuous. So let's do a few together. Okay, the first one, they give you these words. Bus here, when will the get, right? So you always start, as we discussed earlier in our video on past tense, with a question word. So when would have to go first. The question words, to remind you, are when, where, why, what, how, and who. These are the ways to start the questions in the sentence. So where do we see one? Here, with when. Okay, now, from when you go to the future itself. When will the bus get here? When will the bus get here? So it asks, at what time will the bus arrive? When, in the future, will the bus get here? So, from here, then you want to change it into future continuous. And the way we would put it into future continuous is by changing this verb here. So, this is what you do. First, you'd start with when, and you continue with will the bus. But instead of get, because in future simple, they have will and then verb, will, verb, you'd have to do will be, verb with ing. When will the bus be getting here? So, notice this important difference as well. When you have a statement, you say, I will get there. I will get there. However, when you make it into a question, it changes to, say if you did when will I get there? So, when you're asking a question, you have to flip these two. I will becomes will I when used with when. When will I get there? I will get there. When will I get there? Why does this matter? Because we learned above that the future simple, for example, is will plus verb. However, down here in these questions, you'll have to do the question word, then will, and then the verb has to go over here because you have to flip the order of the subject, the bus, it. It will get here. When will it get here? Flip the two. So let's do one more together. Okay. Football tomorrow, play will you. So you have to start with one of the question words, but there isn't any here. So you can start with this, will. So if this was a sentence, you would say, you will play football tomorrow. This is a statement. You will play football tomorrow, period. Now make it a question. How do you make it a question? All you do is flip these two. Will you play football tomorrow? Will you play football tomorrow? So that would be how you formulate it in the future simple. Now let's look at the future continuous. Will you, same as before. This says, will you play football tomorrow? The future continuous, you need to add be, verb, ing. Will you be playing football tomorrow? Okay, so please go through the rest of these questions. There should be 6 more. And just remember, flip the I and the will to make the question, maybe add a question word, and then once you have the future simple here, to create the future continuous, take the verb and add be, same verb with ing. These are the parts that change. Play becomes be playing. Okay, so now that you've completed these, let's go over them. So this one gives you baby, you, what, your, call, and will. So do you see any question words? I see one here. It's what? What? So then after this, a sentence would say, you will call. But here it's a question, so you flip. What will you call? Will you call your baby? Okay, now we want to make it into future continuous. In future continuous, only one part will actually change. Anyone know which part? It is call. Call. This part here will be what changes in future continuous. And let's see how. You'd start the same. What will you? So here's where you put call. But we know future continuous is be plus verb plus ing. What will you be calling your baby? like so. So, as you can see, it's just this part that actually changes. What will you call your baby? What will you be calling your baby? Okay, let's continue. Sandwich, you, which, have, will. So, another question word is which. Sandwich, will, you, have. And then this part here, the verb, is what will be changed. And it will change to what sandwich will you be having? Okay, let's continue. The first who, be, Q, in, will. So, the question word we see here is who. Who, then you add will, be the first in the queue. And you want to change this. Be. Who will be actually doesn't change in this form. Because if you were to change it to present continuous, it would be who will be being the first in the queue. That actually doesn't work. So for this one, you would say nothing. So please, have a look at all of this work here. Now, for this exercise, I do want to remind you that it's not too important yet how well you're able to switch all these words around and take all these words and make it into the sentence. That's not really what's that important. The big thing is to be able to make this form into this form and see the difference. See that play turns into be playing. Will you play football tomorrow? Will you be playing football tomorrow? If you can go from here to here, that's all good. That's what we need to learn from this lesson. So this, just to remind you, it may seem very hard, but the real object of this was to understand the differences in these types of tenses and how to formulate them. So with that, that concludes our video. Thank you so much for watching the channel, and please, as always, hit subscribe, especially if you found these helpful. Feel free to leave any comments for any suggestions on other videos that I may do. And as always, thank you so much for watching.